I'm a freshman at this school. As many of you all know, this is Burroughs, who will be our presenter for today. I have my introduction, but since most of you all know almost everything about from his keynote, I'm going to skip that. He is just a couple things. He's a grassroots global youth soccer. He's raised $10,000, and he's a really awesome guy. So please put your hands together.
Okay, so seeing as last time was a little bit bigger and we're a little bit smaller here, I thought what I'd do is this could be an extended Q&A session if that's how you guys wanted to do that. I'm happy to answer any question you might have about anything that I've done or any projects that you guys might be working on. So does that sound like something you guys might be interested in, or should I just talk about something random? Random. Okay, so you guys are really lazy then. What? Talk about football. You know what we talk about grassroots soccer? Yes. Okay. So,
Yes.
wait, say no or yes?
Yes. Everything goes.
Okay. Does anyone not know the story of me and grassroots soccer?
You won. What's the question?
Wait, can everyone in the back hear me?
What you said.
Okay, so
Perfect.
the request from the front here was that I talk about my experience with grassroots soccer. Is this something that people are interested in?
Yes.
Okay, I hear no's. Where do I hear the no's from?
I think hands are better. I think hands are so better.
Females. Why are the females saying no?
I think hands are so better. I think hands are so better.
Okay, let me start. It was grade 11. Grade 11, I was playing varsity soccer. I was also coaching at a club that was affiliated with my high school. That was when my boss at the time, he said to my friend Drew and I, "Are you guys interested in helping a bunch of kids out?"
Yes.
That was our reaction. Our reaction was actually it was less enthusiastic. It was more like, "Sure, why not? That sounds easy." I think the theme of everything I've said today is that it's not as easy as you might think it is. Okay, so the proposition was put to us. It was very simple. We had to host a 3-on-3 barefoot soccer tournament that would raise money for grassroots soccer so that they could run HIV prevention education sessions in either South Africa, Zimbabwe, or Zambia. That was the premise of how I started. So it was, it took us like 6 weeks to put this thing together. We ended up having the tournament. We had about 300 people from the school come up to the tournament, and we raised about $10,000 that day, in one day. Let me preface the context of this tournament. So this tournament was part of a youth campaign that was started either at Dartmouth or at Brandeis, I forget now. And the premise was, how do we get college-age kids to care about what grassroots soccer is doing? And this was the easiest way, because you don't actually have to be good at soccer, or football, sorry. You don't actually have to be good at football in order to play in this tournament. It's 3-on-3. The pitches are really small. The ball is really small. The goals are really small. So we can invite a lot of people. Right? So that's the premise. When we took it to Hong Kong, it was the first time it had been done outside the US. That's number one. Number two, it was the first time that it was not a college-age event. So we opened it up not just to the high school, but to the entire community. So we said anyone from as low as kindergarten to as old as, well, however old you want to go, if you give us the money, you can come out and play. Put you into a schedule. Okay? So that was the idea. So we split it off into 3 groups. We said all the primary school kids, you're going to go in one group because having someone in grade 1 play someone in grade 12 is not very fair. I should know this because I coached kids at that age level, and whenever they asked me to play with them, it wasn't very fair. I was bigger, faster, stronger. I could bully them. In the middle, we had middle school, because you never really know where to put middle school, so we just said we're going to put middle school all together. On the far end, we said if you're in grade 9, all the way up, you're going to be in one group. And we weren't sure how many teacher groups or adult groups we were going to get, but we said, you know what, we'll keep our eyes open. Or we'll keep our options open just in case. In fact, there was an adult group. There were a couple of adult groups. One of them was, my dad was actually on that team. He grabbed a bunch of friends and came together. These are players, the people that, their kids were on soccer teams, but they didn't play themselves. They made it to the semifinals of their age group, actually, which is kind of surprising considering that my dad's not very athletic at all. So this was the basic premise, and then, as I said, at the end of the day, so you basically pay a registration fee, and then that's how we raised our money. Now, the next year, Drew and I are seniors. We had a goal at the end of the first year. We said, if this is a successful tournament at the end of grade 11, we would like it to be part of the permanent school calendar. So as many of you guys know, it's difficult. Every weekend there's always a different event. Someone's got a band concert, someone's got a football match, someone's, I don't know, doing something else, right? It's difficult to get a free weekend. And so we said, if this is good the first year, we don't want to have to compete the second year. The second year, we had 300 people from the entire school community come out. We don't want to compete for the numbers next year. We want it to be, when we get back to school in August or September, it's going to be there. People know to expect that it's going to be there. And we were helped a little bit because we formed a partnership with PepsiCo. So they were, one of my friends' dads was like the VP of marketing for Asia for PepsiCo. So I wrote to him, or his assistant rather, and I said, look, can you help us out? Is this something you're interested in? Because PepsiCo does a lot of work with football and football sponsorships. And they said, okay, we will provide a Gatorade bottle for everyone who comes out. Every participant gets one Gatorade bottle. In addition, you get a water bottle, like one of those little, like you pop the top off and then you drink. One of those bottles for everyone who's registered in the tournament. And then in addition, you get a free Gatorade t-shirt. And then in addition, you get a sling bag, a gym bag. Okay? And then on top of that, we had made our own t-shirts and we're giving everyone who's registered their own t-shirts. So when we talk about marketing and how to convince other people to buy into your idea and want to come next year, of those 300 people, every single one of them had at least 5 or 4, they all drank the Gatorade, 4 pieces of memorabilia from that, what we called the Lose the Shoes tournament. Which meant that for the next 6 months, or for the rest of the school year, those people that were there were wearing those shirts, and the people that weren't there wanted to wear those shirts. They wanted to have the gym bag, they wanted to have the water bottle. And they all associated, no one needed to ask, oh, where did you get that water bottle from? Because there was only one place you could get that water bottle, and that was on that day. So the second year, when we opened registration, we had about 600 people show up, or registered beforehand. So we doubled the number of participants. Now we also, and this is something that I'm sure that all the people here involved in the GIN organization team would not recommend, we kept registration open on the day and throughout the day. So if you showed up, it started at 9, if you showed up at 10 o'clock and said, you know what, here's my money, I want to form a team and play, we said, sure, you can't win the thing, but we'll give you like 5 games. Because they're only 5-minute long games. We played a song, and at the end of the song, everyone just kind of rotated through. So that's how we did it. Which meant that, yes, there were 600 people already signed up, but we didn't limit ourselves. So we said, if the idea is we want to raise money, guess who comes with their kids, especially primary school kids? Parents. Guess who has more money than kids? Parents. When parents see that their kids are having fun, and that they might be able to do the same thing, parents are like, yo, we should make a team. They don't actually use yo, but they say we should make a team. So they make a team. Everyone still in the back hear me? Just okay? Okay, good. So that's what we did. So that was that. I asked this at the last panel. Who can tell me what happened in 2008, around December 2008? What was going on in the world? Yes. Yes. So the stock crash. Market crash. Someone's going to say probably the housing market busted. There was some mortgages. Prime or subprime mortgage, something. Yes, basically the moral of the story is, when we wanted to host the next year's tournament in December 2008, the world didn't have money, right? So we were asking our entire school community, which was pretty wealthy, to not just match what we did last year, which was to raise 10,000 US dollars. We wanted to see if we could improve on that. At a time when the global economy was pretty much crashing harder than it had in, well, as you guys know, 70 years, right? So not easy. On top of that, our biggest sponsor was the JW Marriott. So we had a whole bunch of sponsors that donated prizes to get a raffle draw. And raffle draws are also key for those of you thinking of fundraising for different projects, right? So we had, I think 15 prizes or grand prizes. We had a bunch of other small prizes like dinner to this restaurant, right? Like the restaurant came in and provided a meal for two or something. Our top 4 prizes were all stays at the JW Marriott resorts. All of them were in Thailand. Does anyone know what was happening in Thailand around December 2008? Yes? No. Oh, it wasn't a tsunami, no. Everyone was protesting on the streets of Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, which was the main airport that you flew into. So there were protests and sit-ins around the airport. So Thailand was not a particularly pleasant place to visit in December 2008. Let me remind you, our top 4 prizes that generated a lot of money were all for trips to Thailand. On top of this, over the summer, before my senior year in high school, my high school decided it was time to make an investment and resurface the field. So what was previously a mud patch was now going to become a brand new FIFA Level 2 state-of-the-art turf field. That was the plan. When we got back to school in August, it wasn't done yet. At the end of September, the Rugby Federation came in and said, the field is too narrow, we can't certify the field for competitive use. We had a very competitive rugby team. We had a pretty competitive football team, of which I was a part, and our coach said, there's no way that we're going to play home games on a field where the distance between the sideline and the edge of the penalty box is about this much. So, the field we can't use. What do? Well, they tear up all the lines and they start readjusting the field. So meanwhile, we started prepping, and we're thinking to ourselves, we're going to have an event on the only field in school which isn't finished yet, in the middle of an economic crisis, or at the start of an economic crisis, where our top 4 raffle prizes may not be as attractive as they were the last year. So you can imagine Drew and I were a little bit uneasy. This is also our senior year. This is the last chance we have to do this. Not the best time to be thinking. We ended up, at the end of the day, raising $12,000. So we went up from the previous year, which was massive for us. Everything came together just at the right moment, at the right time. I'll talk about, because this came up in the previous panel, so I'll talk about why we were so successful, or why I think we were so successful. It's because we convinced every other club on campus to buy into our idea. So we created a system wherein our success was tied to their success, and vice versa. So how do we do this? Well, I happen to know at the point when you get to be a senior, chances are most of the presidents of most of the clubs and societies on campus are seniors. I happen to know most of the presidents of most of the clubs on campus. And so I convinced them all, and I said, we kind of tried this the year before, but we really made it big the second year. And I said, look, Habitat for Humanity, building houses, HIV/AIDS, not much in common. Is there a way we can work together? And they said, look, you've got 600 people coming to your thing. Have you thought about how to feed them? And I said, this is a really good point. Because to have 600 people on a field for 9 hours during the day and not feed them, that's very dangerous. Especially little kids in the afternoon sun. Okay? So they said, okay, you know what, Rob? We will make the food from home. We will bring the food. We will sell the food. We will give you 70% of the money that we make off the food. And we'll keep 30% for us. It's going to subsidize our club fees and also to donate to Habitat. Great. Went to Roots and Shoots. Roots and Shoots. Saving chimpanzees. HIV/AIDS. Not much of a link. I said, what can you guys contribute? And they said, well, you got a bunch of little kids. We could paint their faces. And I said, sure. If you think we can do that, we can do that. We'll paint some faces. And so they said, sure, you can keep 50. We'll take 50, you keep 50. And I said, fine. Because all I required was a 50-50 split. Some clubs are a little bit more generous because they raise more money. Others were doing their own fundraising of sorts. And I did this with just about every service club on campus. And so now not only was Drew and I invested in the success of this, but all the leaders on my community, or in my community, in high school, were now invested in this. And the best part is that because, of course, you need someone to actually be in the tent to sell the food, the Habitat Club can say to its members, you need hours, we need people, you need to be there. And so the kids at Habitat go, well, we need to be there anyway, and everyone else is going to be having fun, so why don't we have fun? And so then all of a sudden, the people that have to be there doing their volunteer hours, or their club hours or whatever, are there later in the day to play. And you get more people. Again, the same idea with the Gatorade, the same idea with the shirts. Those who didn't come out the first year wanted the shirt the second year. And those who didn't get the shirts the second year, well, I'd graduated by that point, so I really don't know what the reaction was. But it was generally positive. So then I graduated. Okay, we'll skip forward to when I graduate. I graduate, as mentioned very briefly, my freshman year in college. Linda invited me down to Boston to talk about this as an example of student innovation and leadership on campus. It's important to note that I had a bunch of advisors, so it's not entirely student-driven because I had the support of the vice principal of the high school. It's also important to note, and this is for the teachers that are kind of here, and also for students, at no point did either our boss with the club, who provided us with a lot of he was the one in charge of all the booking in the school, so he booked the field for us. The vice principal nor our boss at any point during this entire process tried to take credit for our work. And this means failure or success. So if it was a big success, we got the credit for it. If it was a colossal failure, we would be responsible. So, for example, I think it was 48 hours before the tournament, we put up all of our posters and everything like that. We'd done a really cool job. Everyone in the school knew what was going on, what day it was. We realized on the poster, we didn't say what time the event started. You would think that for something this big, that would be, you know what, we're going to meet on the 14th at 9 a.m. on the field. Everything be ready. We missed the 9 a.m. part. Now, thankfully, we had overlooked it everywhere but Facebook. So, for those of you that have spoken about Facebook, Facebook's not exactly the best tool to use for a lot of social media. But in this case, it was really helpful because on the event that we created, it said starting time 9 o'clock. So everyone showed up at 9, but we were gambling. We were hoping. We said there's no way for us to mass email everyone in time to say, you guys got to be there this time. After Boston, which is where I spoke about that, that's when I started getting involved more with GIN. And because I was getting more involved with GIN, I said, well, you know what, guys? I said to Grassroots Soccer, people are starting to hear about this. This isn't just one small event in Hong Kong anymore. Is there any way that I could do more? I could take on more responsibility. And so they said, sure, we're trying to grow the Lose the Shoes campaign around the world. We're doing a pretty good job in the US through the colleges and through some high schools and some soccer clubs, but around the world it's not really working. So they said, would you be interested in that? I said, absolutely, because at the time, Hong Kong was the only tournament. So I said, I can handle a tournament that I created. Like, that's easy peasy for me. Especially because I knew who the next 3 successors were going to be. And that's important. So succession is important. For those of you that are seniors and start something, or that are juniors and start something, you get 2 years to perfect it. When you leave, unless there's some document that you leave behind, you take the institutional and organizational memory with you to college or wherever you go. So the poor kid who comes along after you and tries to keep up what you do has no idea why you did certain things or how you did certain things. So it's always important to make sure that you're continually coaching people. And that's what we did. We knew who the next, as I said, we knew who the next 3 people were going to be to take over this project for us. And they had been to both of those tournaments. They knew everything that was going on. By the end of the first 6 months that I was in charge of all of the Lose the Shoes internationally, we had about 12 tournaments around the world, which was not a lot considering there were about 60, 70 in the US. But for one person managing everything, on top of being a full-time student and taking extra classes, it was a lot of work. And it ended up being quite good up until the point where I got to my junior year and I said, guys, this is great. Maybe you should start thinking about hiring someone full-time. I had just helped them work out a 1-year deal with Product Red. So if any of you guys have seen the Gap shirts with the red in the brackets, Red is a big contributor to the Global Fund, which is kind of the main source of UN funding outside UNAIDS for tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV. And Grassroots Soccer is a recipient of the Global Fund. So I helped them work out a 1-year partnership. We were trying to figure out what are some stuff that we could do that would make the Lose the Shoes project or campaign more exciting and more attractive to college-age students. As I started giving up my responsibilities in terms of the international tournaments, because I said I can't do this anymore, I started up something at my own university. And I said to Grassroots Soccer, I said, look, I can do a lot of cool things here because it's just me, and there's a fairly there's only 2,500 students at my university, and there's a fairly extensive athletic network. So what I can do is I can use the Mount A project as an experimental arm. So everything we do there will be an experiment to see if certain activities are more attractive to college age and university age students, and then you can take that and bring it to the US where you're making a lot more money. So the first thing we did was, in my junior year, we took the entire women's soccer team, the entire men's soccer team, and I'm going to use soccer here because we also have a football team, like a Canadian football team at that school, so I need to make the distinction for myself. We took photos with them, and then we brought the captains or the star players of every other varsity sport, and we had them pose doing something that was in the sport, right? So, for example, the captain of the volleyball team, she was serving, but instead of serving a volleyball, she was serving a soccer ball. And we photoshopped the age ribbon onto it. And this went, and we posted it on Facebook, and they all changed their profile pictures, and our initial intent was to create a calendar out of this. So just that small group of varsity athletes. And it went viral. And almost overnight, but definitely by the end of the week, every residence, every dormitory on campus wrote to us and said, hey, why are you only including varsity athletes? And I said, because this is a thing that uses sport to help people, so it kind of made sense. They're like, well, we want to get involved. And then all the club sports, which are not like fully competitive sports, wrote to me and said, Rob, I know we're not varsity, but we're sports too, so you should include us. And I said, yeah, you guys know that I go to school too, right? Like I don't just take photos of people. And then, so we took those photos, and it was a little bit different for the residences. We just got like the residence executives, like the president of each dormitory building, and all of a sudden everyone in the residence was paying attention to what was going on. And then we got another email from a whole bunch of clubs and societies on campus who said, well, we're all part of a community, we should get involved. We should take pictures of us. And I'm thinking to myself, what does the Religious Studies Society have anything to do with what I'm trying to do here? But they wanted in, and so we said, fine, you can come in and you can do this. And we'll take photos of it, because you never know, we might get some money out of you. And that's when it occurred to me, if all these people are getting the photo taken, and everyone's paying attention to the photos, maybe you can charge some money off of it. Not professionally, but I can say, you know what, the only thing we require, other than, like, we promote your club and say your club is, kind and cares about AIDS and whatnot. In exchange, we're going to require some sort of payment. And we realized that it wasn't, we didn't just have to limit ourselves to just the clubs that we took photos of. We would do this for the entire school community. So we said, 100. That's the number of students we want to graduate through Grassroots Soccer's program. And Grassroots Soccer, being one of those really good organizations, can actually track the amount of money it costs to graduate one student through the entire curriculum. And they use this as a fundraising tool, but they also use it as part of the research. So when they evaluate themselves, they go, is this the best use of our money? And so I knew the actual monetary amount it cost to put one student through Grassroots Soccer's program. In addition, I went back to Grassroots Soccer and I said, look, I don't want to just give you money for 100 students. Can we find a community of 100 students that actually, that we can dedicate, form some sort of connection between Grassroots Soccer and Mount Allison? And they wrote to me and they said, you know what, Rob, around this time, Zambia is looking to redo their programming. And I said, how so? And they said, well, the research tells us that girls between the age of 13 and 18 are the most likely demographic to be affected by AIDS. Not necessarily infected, but affected by HIV and AIDS. So we're going to tailor our programming specifically to young girls. And I said, you know what? 70% of my student population at Mount Allison is female. The majority of leaders on campus are female. I think we can draw the connection. I don't think anyone would be opposed to me saying, we're going to dedicate and we're going to send our money to the Zambian operations. So that's what we did. So the challenge was 100 students. We want everyone, every group on campus, and I knew there were more than 100, there were in fact like 150 clubs and societies on campus, to raise enough money for one student. So one student's $25. Say you're on a sports team. There are 18 of you. It costs each of you like $1.25 to put into the pot, and you've got one student, or one young person in Africa. That easy. You go to the football team where there are 80 of them, and they're putting in something like, 40 cents a person into the pot. And we went to every academic department and said, look, profs, I know we didn't take photos of you because that's kind of weird, but you can jump in on this too. If your entire collective department puts in enough money to raise one child, you can be part of this project. And in a small department where there are five teachers, each teacher donates $5. And it costs like 2 coffees. That's Starbucks, maybe. So that was our target, 100. By the end of the first year, we were at something like 187 students. And times 25, that's how much money and a bit of spare change we sent that to Zambia. The second year was less about fundraising, more about trying out different things. So how can we partner with different clubs, different societies, different is what we were doing. So basically, we didn't have Greek life on our campus, but Greek life is pretty big on a lot of American campuses, and a lot of them do a lot of really good charity work. So how do we partner what we do with the equivalent of Greek life? And that was our challenge in trying to figure out in a Canadian context, how can we apply that? So it was very experimental, and I'll spare you the details. It wasn't much, it basically wasn't much fundraising. But I said to them going into my final year, I said, look guys, I've got to think about grad school, I've got to think about finishing my thesis, I've got to think about a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not sure that I can do any logistics anymore. And they said, that's fine. Because at this point, basically all I was doing was, except for 1 or 2 tournaments overseas, all I was doing was outreach. And the outreach is key because say a third of you go to US colleges on the East Coast or on the West Coast. And say half of those have a lose the shoes tournament. You know going in what that is. And so I said, guys, I tap into a really unique network of students that will not just end up becoming your donors in the future, but can also help spread the word and the work that you guys do. If any of you are interested in global health, there's a lot of research to be done in how you can use preventative education to stop diseases. It's great if you're a biochemist and you want to find the cure to AIDS. Like, that's great. But we also know that it's a lot easier and a lot cheaper if we catch them before they actually get infected. So there's a lot of research to be done there. So if you guys are interested in this kind of stuff, and you know about it coming into university, it helps. And so that's kind of where I was, and that's kind of where I am now. So I graduated last year. I'm doing my grad studies right now. And I basically do full ambassadorial stuff. I don't do any logistical stuff anymore. In fact, the only fundraising that I did last year was through the New York City Triathlon, which is kind of a fun time in itself. Okay, so that's that. That's my grassroots soccer story. It's kind of quiet. This is the part where you guys don't get to be lazy anymore. This is the reason why I have one of these, is so that people who have questions can ask questions. Because chances are, if you have a question, someone else in the room might have a question. Or I might be able to answer a question that you come across later. Yo, yes.
What are you studying?
I'm doing a master's in public and international affairs. I did my undergrad in international relations, politics, and geography. Thank you. Yes?
Well, doing all these logistics, was there anybody above you, like, kind of telling you what to do? Or was it all you?
Yes and no. So when I spoke today about being an autonomous entity, I have a supervisor of sorts. I have a contact person at grassroots soccer. So they're the ones that I tried to get in touch with them before coming here to basically say, look guys, I know we're going like a strategic overhaul and a review of what grassroots soccer's mission is now. Can you inform me and update me so that I can bring it here? I did have a contact person that was kind of overseeing what I was doing, so there was some formality to what I was doing. But I wasn't given instructions. I come to these GIN conferences not, yes, as an ambassador for grassroots soccer, but they don't send me here. Like, it's not like GIN doesn't go through grassroots soccer to get to me. Yeah.
You say that X kind of quantity of money helps a kid. What were you saying, like for a day, for a month, a year?
It's so they have an 8-course or 8-unit curriculum that spanned. I think it's almost a full year, a full academic year, and they try to incorporate this into the school calendar, so that you're either coming as part of, you play in the school football team and you're coming to practice, and we incorporate it in there. It's the cost of, it's not like a one-day session, it's the cost of running you through the entire curriculum, and that depends on, again, availability, right? So one of the key measures is, are these kids showing up? Because it's great we can have sessions, but if we have sessions and we train the coaches, to be good, who are good role models, who can help these kids learn about AIDS and about health and healthy living, but these kids don't show up, then we kind of defeated the purpose of what we do. So it is dependent, but I do believe it's like, again, this is one of the things. I don't do any operations work on the ground, right? So I don't actually know this kind of stuff. But yes, I believe it's over the course of an academic year. Yes?
Do you still do anything related to soccer?
Yeah, I play in a rec league, like recreationally, decently competitive. I played over the summer for the town in a competitive league. Yeah, it's like I don't play varsity anymore. I don't have time, or the competitive drive anymore. It's hard when you have to wake up at 6 every other morning. It's hard when you're at practice until 8 o'clock and you do this repeatedly on top of a full course load. And I played varsity for probably about 5 years, through high school and through university, and it was a really rewarding experience. But I realized I couldn't go on exchange if I wanted to play varsity, so I didn't play varsity. I went on exchange. Yeah.
What inspired you to make this tournament?
I could do it. I mean, like I hate to be glib, but no, it was an opportunity that was feasible. It was doable, and at the time we thought it wouldn't require a lot of work. It was one of those things where I've always maintained that if you're an athlete, and say for me like a footballer, if all I do at the end of the day with my sport and the sole accumulation of what I do with my sport is kick a ball around with a bunch of other guys, is that fulfilling? Is that really using the sport to its potential? You have to understand that in Africa or in that part of Africa where they might speak 50 different languages, football is the one language that unites them. And they accept it. That's the reason why it works. It's because it's a common language that when you score a goal, everyone knows what that means. It doesn't matter what language you celebrate in. Everyone knows that feeling. Yeah. So it was a way to enhance it. Where are we going? Yes.
How did you start out with the grassroots reach out to you, or did you reach out to them? I mean, high school.
So as I said, I think my boss, if I remember correctly, he found the idea. We wrote to them and said we can do this. And then since then I've been in kind of constant contact. So what was the question about the supervisor? Yeah. So the supervisor my supervisor ended up being, or was, the person that I was in contact with, starting from high school. Another thing really quickly too. So the only time I've been written to by the head of the organization, the guy who actually runs everything, not just the founder, the guy who runs everything, is 2 years after I graduated. That tournament that I started raised $24,000 in a day, which is great. It was also double the highest number anyone else had ever done around the world. So I got an email from the head of the organization and said, Rob, this is really cool stuff that you started here. I want 100 tournaments a year raising $24,000 each. Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet. It's a nice way to dream. Yeah, let's go to the back.
How did you get through, like, when you had trouble maybe with your colleagues or how did you get through that and keep on going for what you wanted?
In high school, we had very few. I mean, Drew and I worked incredibly well together. We knew each other's strengths almost intrinsically. We'd played together on the same team, so we knew each other quite well. We lived in the same neighborhood, so that was okay. After that, in terms of my biggest frustrations have always been, and I air them with the people in the organization, so have always been my relationship with the organization. So I've been with them for pushing on 8 years now. And this is the nature of NGO work, right? Like you can volunteer a lot of your time and there's no guarantee of a job. And for someone in my position where I'm reaching the end of my second degree and thinking about, hey, maybe now would be a good time to start a job or find a job, and a real job that's not just a summer research gig, there's no guarantee that there's going to be something there for you. There's no guarantee, because I'm an autonomous entity that's not officially on the payroll, that anything I say has a direct influence or a consequential influence on what happens in the organization. So as I said today, I, starting next week, will no longer receive internal communications from the organization because I'm not on the payroll. So I'm not considered staff, right? The internal communications for me have been massive because without actually having to check in on someone, I know exactly what the organization is doing on the ground. So we get field reports from South Africa, from Zambia, from Zimbabwe. We get field reports from headquarters that say this is where we're taking the strategic overview of the organization. And I know when I come here, I know where we're going. And that helps. And so in terms of frustrations, well, you keep going because you love it. That's really why. You've had your hand up for a while.
Did any other people or schools that start the program?
Yeah, so we've had a whole bunch. So when I went from 1 to 12 overseas, and actually some of them have started as a direct result of GIN conferences where I presented this kind of stuff. We had one pop up in London, we had ones pop up in Singapore. Other times I talk to schools and I say, maybe grassroots soccer is not the best recipient of your money. So in Jakarta, for example, there's an organization that does something very similar. They're not quite at the education level yet, but they're at stigma. So it's an organization that deals with HIV and AIDS. And the main means of infection or spread in Indonesia is through drug use, right? So through needles. And so there's an organization that works in Indonesia that does this kind of stuff, that addresses the stigma behind it, saying, look, if we just keep not talking about AIDS, it's not going to go away. It's not something you can just wash off. I mean, Jacob Zuma said a lot of crazy things, but that's possibly the craziest thing he said. You can't just shower and get rid of AIDS, and you can't just hide it in a corner and not talk about it, and it'll go away. Okay? So now the school in Jakarta does a similar tournament, but their money goes to this organization. This organization, within its members, has now started a league called the League of Hope in Indonesia. This league is the selection process for the national team that they send to represent Indonesia to the Homeless World Cup. And the Homeless World Cup is an incredible organization. In fact, after the GIN conference in Jakarta, 6 months later I found myself in Paris before I started my exchange, where the Homeless World Cup was that year, and I met the Indonesian team that I met at the conference. And I gave them all, at the time we just finished the agreement product red, so I had a whole bunch of Nike red laces. So I was giving them out. I said, each one of you, when I see you in Paris, you should be wearing this. And when the captain saw me, he recognized me, and the first thing he showed me was that, you know what, I got my laces on. And they made it to the semifinals. It's the first time they'd ever been in the World Cup. They made it to the semifinals and then got knocked out by the eventual champions. Now, they're a guaranteed fixture in the semifinals. These are guys who, all of them, are either former drug addicts or HIV positive. All of them are also homeless. Homeless World Cup. And now, they're heroes in this organization. And there's an entire league that was underground that's now, an important part of society, especially in Jakarta and in the neighboring communities around Jakarta. Yeah, let's go to the back.
Where are you from?
I'm from Canada. I'm currently living in Ottawa. Yes.
Did you ever encounter moments where you were overwhelmed by other stuff like school, other problems that you had, and maybe felt like stepping down? And if you did, how did you deal with it? Or maybe something didn't work out and you felt like stepping down. How would you deal with that?
Okay, so 2 answers to that. First of which is, I recognize that going into my senior year, I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I'd either burn out or I'd give up. And so I said, that's when I made the agreement with grassroots soccer, I'm going to give up my logistics. At the time, they'd also hired someone full-time to deal with all the tournaments, so I didn't actually have to worry about them anymore. That was the first thing. It's also recognizing when you have too much on your plate. The worst thing you can be as a person is spread too thin. That's what I believe. The second, there are times when I've almost turned my back on grassroots soccer. So I did my 5 years, I'm done. My goal was, when we started, to get you guys to 500,000 graduates. Their goal is to graduate 1 million students or 1 million young people through their curriculum by the 2014 World Cup. I said, when I started, I'm going to get you to 500,000 and then do my own thing. We're at almost 700,000 now, still with them. At one point, I said, you know what, Right to Play is a bigger organization in Canada. I think I can take the skills I learned there and probably get more meaningful employment with them. There were times when, I said, well, I could dedicate, instead of do all the stuff with grassroots soccer, I could dedicate more of my time to GIN. In the end, it's hard to say no to an organization that you believe in, right? I mean, this is a disease that we have the cure to if we want it. This is an organization that's done its homework, it's done its research, it's making an impact. So in 2012, for the first time, we could track graduates from grassroots soccer over the course of 10 years. So what were the numbers telling us in 2002? What were the numbers telling us in 2012? And last year, what did the World Health Organization say? For the first time in the history of mankind, the prevalence rate for HIV is going down. Okay, so there's something about being with an organization, being involved in a something that's at the forefront of history, that's making history. And it's hard to say no to that, really, when you're there. And at this point, I've been with them 8 years, right? Where else am I, not where else am I going to go, but who else can live up to the highs and the lows that I've experienced with them?
For our last question, I believe that's the guy way in the back. Wait for a while.
Is your thesis available for anyone to read?
Yes. So my thesis is available for anyone who would like to read. If you would like, come down, give me your email address. I think there's a blank sheet of paper. If I can borrow that, I might get his emails down. That's great. I'll send you an electronic copy. I've got a hard copy with me as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Give Mr. Burroughs a round of applause.